Indian Stamp Act is a very important legislation. In this tutorial class, we will broadly study some of the important features of Indian Stamp Act. We have classified this act under the following heads, and we study this act by way of few questions. Number 1, why there shall be a stamp act? Number 2, whether every human transaction requires to be stamped. Number 3, whether stamp duty is paid by way of stamps or by way of money. Number 4, what are the consequences for non-payment of stamp duty? And finally, what are the remedies available under law to get over for non-payment of stamp duty? Now coming to the first question, why Stamp Act? Let me remind you, day in and day out, we enter into innumerable transactions. It can be either purchasing a house, it can be purchasing a car, it can be purchasing a mobile, it can be purchasing anything, and it can be lending money as well. And all these human transactions create certain rights and obligations in favor of parties to those transactions. Law demands certain duty to recognize those transactions. That in order to recognize those transactions, law demands certain duty by way of money. That duty which state demands for recognize this transaction is called stamp duty. Now the next question is whether stamp duty shall be paid for all transactions. The answer is no. Only those transactions which are expressly covered under Section 3, Schedule 1 and Schedule 1A of the Stamp Act, only those transactions required to be duly stamped. It means stamp duty shall be paid to the government or state. For the rest of the transactions, irrespective of non-payment of transaction, they are deemed to be recognized by law. For our purpose, we have given some of the transactions which can be seen under the Schedule 1 and 1A. Sale deed, adoption deed, mortgage deed, lease deed, articles of association, all these are all required to be stamped under Indian Stamp Act. And the next question, whether they are required to be paid by way of stamps or money. Traditionally, originally under the Act, all duties which are levied by the Stamp Act shall be paid either by way of adhesive stamps or by way of engrossed stamps. These are the two stamps which we find primarily under the Stamp Act. Thus, the duty to the state is paid by way of a stamp. But in the modern times, there is a path-breaking change. Any duty which exceeds more than 100 can be paid by way of money also. That is the sea change that was brought a decade ago. And now, moving to next issue, what are the consequences of unduly stamped document or unstamped document? Let me share with you, unduly stamped document means it is a document which is not completely paid with stamp duty. Perhaps it might have been paid a nominal duty, but not the exact duty which was prescribed by law. Understamped or unduly stamped by and large carries the same thing. Unstamped means totally unpaid, but the term that was used under the Act is unduly stamped. Now coming to the consequence, once a document is not duly stamped, every public authority, including court, has a power to impound or seize that unduly stamped document. Number 2, person who did not pay stamp duty can be penalized. However, the sanction of the district collector is mandatory. The district collector, while giving sanction, shall see that the person who did not pay the stamp duty, he did it with an intention to evade stamp duty. That is the criteria to give a sanction by the district collector. This is rarely invoked. And finally, what is the net result of non-payment of stamp duty? Let me remind you, there is hardly any purpose. It is nothing less than a dustbin. It can serve no purpose. It shall not be used in evidence. It cannot be admitted in evidence. It is a mere scrap. It's untouchable document, to put it in one word. And and the next question that raises in our mind, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are pay the 10 times the original stamp duty that is prescribed under law to the public servant or the court, as the case may be. Or otherwise, you can make that public officer who seized your document to send it to district registrar, who will pay the, who will collect, in fact, collect the actual stamp duty which is supposed to be paid as on the date of executing the document. So these are the basic issues which a lawyer shall know while reading the Stamp Act. That's the end of the Stamp Act. Thank you.